Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along. Because you've heard from Paul there, and you've heard from Ross, who spoke very eloquently. Fishing is the epitome of our membership in the EU, and it will be the acid test of whether we take back control or not. No other industry symbolises the surrender of this country to the Eurocrats in Brussels than ours. We were the sacrifice and the prostration of our nation and the altar of the dark dreams of a federal Europe, and it's our communities and our heritage that have been absolutely smashed. They, our political class in the past, and even many today, surrendered one of our island's greatest natural resources. It is one of the finest in the world that we have. We call ourselves an island people, and yet we've surrendered what is rightfully ours. Now is our chance to take it back. And we as an organisation, and everybody else, as you've seen from the Thames Flotilla, as you've seen from the demonstrations we did when it became apparent that we were going to be sold out with the transition, we will fight to the bitter end, whatever the cost may be, to secure a future for our way of life. Mr. Bevan, maybe not a popular name at a Tory conference, once said that only an organising genius could contrive a shortage of coal and a shortage of fish in these islands, and so our politicians have. There's only 5 sentences between us and a multi-billion-pound sustainable world-leading industry. 5 sentences. An industry that could rejuvenate coastal communities, one that could be a leader and a world leader of implementing sustainable policy to husband our greatest natural resource. An industry that could maintain pride and heritage for so many people for generations to come. That is one thing that is often neglected when you have NGOs, when you have politicians, when you have the great and the good speaking about fishing and about sustainability and about economics and about the politics. The one thing that's continually missed is the people. I have never had so much pride in my life to grow up among some of those folk. Some might be a bit of a rough diamond, but you'll meet some of the finest people you'll get throughout the fishing industry. That is the people that have suffered. It's children from my age up that have had to see the brunt of it. As out of touch metropolitan elites tell us that Europe's a good thing from us. They don't only tell it for fishing, but they tell it for the country as a whole. And that is why Brexit was such a good moment when the British people said, no more. So we have 5 sentences. And that makes it all the more appalling that it was ever sold out, and indeed that there's any ambivalence at all in taking it back. So what's the first sentence? Number 1, entirely abrogate the CFP with no continuation of the policy after 11 p.m. on the 29th of March 2019. That means we automatically restore full control and sovereignty over all our waters and resources. There is nothing to negotiate. Do not listen to the Remainers who say, oh dear, pity's sake, we will have to negotiate. There is nothing to negotiate in fisheries. We leave. Article 50 says the treaty ceases to apply. Therefore, all EU legislation automatically dissolves. The EU has no recourse to say anything but, because they agreed that in an internationally binding treaty. We revert to international law under UNCLOS, and that confers us full sovereignty of all our waters and all our resources. It is instantaneous. George Eustace has, as I said to George Eustace when I met him 2 weeks after we did the referendum in the Thames Flotilla, he said it's going to be a lot of work. And I said, George, you have the easiest job in the world just now. He says, why is that? And I said, because all you've got to do is nothing. Sit back and let the clock run out. So that will automatically restore full control over all our waters and resources, and that will allow us to repatriate what could be an £8 billion industry every year for our coastal communities. If Philip Hammond looks stretched at the budget at times, he's waving bye-bye to £8 billion every year by backing Remain. Only government and only Parliament can give it away again. The only way we cannot have fishing is if it is consciously legislated to give it away again. And that is what is happening with Chequers in the transition. It negates the clean slate of Article 50, saying the treaty ceases to apply. We will have readopted and reobeyed the very rules, the very failed rules, that people voted to leave in the first place. If that is not a political suicide mission, I do not know what is. Not only is it politically illiterate to do so in the face of the referendum result, but it is an existential threat to what is left of the British industry. It is not only 21 months that we can suck up. That 21 months will be the end. And I want everybody to take that back to their MP, and I want anybody to take that back to whoever will listen. Why is it an existential threat to the industry? Well, firstly, because we will have to obey all EU law, as the transition in Chequers says we will do, the EU can amend its acquis at any time as it pleases. That means they'll be free to abolish the derogation that confers a 12-mile limit for member state vessels only. Ironically, as our honourable friend Cheryl Money knows, it's 12 miles in France, where the French can come and throw stones and rocks and smoke bombs at you, but it's only 6 miles round the coast of Cornwall, because the EU took historic fishing rights to push even further up to the beach. So they can abolish a 12-mile limit, which gives protection to our inshore fleet and our broodstocks grounds around our coast. It also means that they can alter relative stability shares. The current shares for the EU has 75% of the resources, even though Britain provides 50% of the waters and 60% of the catches. So the government says, Michael Gove is at pains to say, but we've agreed a clause that relative stability will not change. And if you actually go and read what is proposed in the Transition Chequers Treaty, in the Transition Treaty that will also come into Chequers, in Article 125, what it says is we will maintain the mechanism of relative stability. Read a bit further down, as usual is what the EU does, they covet it in obtuse language, shall we say. Reference to paragraph 4, section 1, I can't remember the exact numbers, and nobody bothers to read it. What does that paragraph say? It says it's at the proposal of the Commission, or the Commission will recommend a proposal on fishing opportunities for the Council to adopt. As has been proven time and time again, especially when Spain joined the European Union, relative stability can be altered. We have agreed to abide by the principle of relative stability, and that principle is that the European Commission is free to alter those shares even further to our detriment. But they needn't even alter relative stability shares, where they get 75% and we 25%. Because all they need to do is agree abysmally poor total allowable catches for the stocks upon which we are dependent. So for instance, North Sea haddock, we currently have a good share of that because that's what the Scots fleet traditionally caught. The EU could agree 0 TAC and there is nothing that we can do about it. That would bring devastation to our fleet. Now the real one that is the one that will kill us, as Ross Thompson alluded to, and I don't even think the officials in DEFRA realise the magnitude of the problem, is the 2019 discard ban. That ban, although it might seem superficially good, only addresses the discard symptom, not the quota cause. Where fishermen are currently forced to catch more than necessary and discard up to half their catch, nobody knows the exact figure, to find what they're allowed to keep to match their quota. This means when vessels leave, as Paul alluded to, you go to sea, you maybe catch 600 boxes, as one of our members did before Christmas, 600 of beautiful big cod, and 600 of fish you're allowed to keep. He had to dump the 600 of cod, because there's a 0 TAC, to keep the 600. As he said, that meant he only landed 600 boxes to be profitable. What he could have done was finished half the trip earlier. He could have killed half the amount of fish, and he could have landed 300 boxes of others and 300 boxes of cod. That is the madness that's going on just now. So what's the EU done in all its glory? It's decided, we'll ban discards. So as of 2019, when you run out of quota for your lowest species, you must stop fishing. That's called a choke species. Remember that. Because as the government's own agency, Seafish, shows in its modelling, 60% of the fish currently available to the UK fleet will go uncaught from those early tie-ups, and a similar proportion of the fleet will go bankrupt. That is the stark reality that we face today. As of 2019, that ban kicks in. The EU has every incentive to fully enforce that ban, because under international law, and under Article 62.2 of UNCLOS, if a nation can no longer catch all its resources, it must give the surplus to its neighbour. So the EU we will be an independent nation, controlled by the European Union. They will be able to impose policy to eradicate what's left of our fleet, and then, lo and behold, they'll be able to claim the resources that we can no longer catch ourselves. That is the barrel of the gun that we are staring down today. If the government continues with Chequers in a transition, they will be guilty of finishing off what remains of a British industry and consigning it to museum in memory. So that's the first one. We need a clean Brexit and we must chuck Chequers. And I implore each and every one of you to fight and to lobby and do everything you can alongside the gallant MPs who are prepared to stand up against the aberration as Chequers to make sure this is killed. If we don't kill Chequers, they'll kill us. And not just the fishing. They could impose laws in the City of London on our car manufacturing. They can take us to pieces in that 21 months. So that is the first thing that we need. What's sentence number 2? 2. Shares based on zonal attachment under international law. And zonal attachment is where a nation rightfully has a share based on the predominance of fish in our waters. Currently it's 25%, it should be 60%. We have some of the richest resources in the world. They're yours, the British people's. They're not Theresa May's, they're not Parliament's. Yours, which we're giving away and which we can get back. But they're a way to be surrendered a second time. The loss of our waters from the common EU pot means that the EU must tighten its belt to avoid breaking international law to fish sustainably. Remainers will tell you, oh, we couldn't possibly walk away, we couldn't possibly not debase ourselves in front of the European Union anymore, because it will be hugely unsustainable, ignoring the discard problem. It won't be unsustainable. Those are our resources. When they come out of the common pot, it is the duty of the European Union to reduce its share, or they are breaking international law. So we have an extreme position of power there, once we have our resources. Number 3, well actually number 2 we could say also, to give you something, we said 8 billion. Paul spoke about Lowestoft. It's 88 million pounds of sole, it's 126 million pounds of herring. I could see Mr. Aldous getting excited at the pound coins running before his eyes and new ribbons to cut on opening market days. That isn't herring and sole alone. You add in plaice and you add in skates and rays, and it comes to somewhere in the region, once it's processed, of about 800 million pounds to East Anglia alone. And that is repeated all around the country. We are tantalisingly close, 6 months away from one of the greatest prizes that the government could ever get back. They talk about coastal structural funds, where we'll give a little bit of money here and a little bit of money there. The greatest fund in the world is under our feet, just ready to take back. So number 3, the most important one that needs to be in the fisheries bill. Never will British waters or resources be bartered away again. Not for any deal and not for any cause. That is absolutely vital to have in the fisheries bill, so no future government or parliament can surrender our resources again. 4, the economic link, especially pertinent for the south coast of Cornwall. The primary objective, I believe, and I hope that each of you share that belief with me, of any government should be to husband our resources, no matter what they are, for maximum sustainable and economic benefit for our people and our communities to thrive. That should be one of the primary duties of government alongside defence. Factor tame, that many will have heard of, and the 4 freedoms, forced us to allow EU-owned but British registered flagships to insidiously buy out British fishermen who were struggling from the initial loss of their own resources. What the flagships resulted in? Well, it was where the ECJ overruled Mrs Thatcher's government in the 1988 Merchant Shipping Act to strengthen the economic link. In that case, with fishing again at the forefront of our enmeshment, with factor tame proved we were no longer masters in our own lands. The ECJ told us that we'd have to overrule our own parliament. Half our resources are now in flagship hands. So not only do we only get 25% to start with, as the EU appropriates half our fish through relative stability shares, but then EU flagships take half of that 25% we get, when we should actually have 60% of the resources by dint of international law. We're operating at 12%. Is it any wonder why British coastal communities are ailing when we've lost that? But they cry, Remainers will cry, British fishermen sold out, they sold their fish. This is the favourite one on Twitter. But is it not to the Remainers' eternal shame that their beloved EU forced our folk out through loss of our own resources? Is it not an absolutely travesty that that was allowed to happen? So sentence number 5, and this is what I really want to cover for you today, is that future policy must be fit for purpose. There is absolutely no point in Brexit, no point in taking back control to carry on with the same dysfunctional policy. And what it must do in the Fisheries Bill is state that all governments for the future must recognise and work with our rich mixed fisheries to allow fishermen and all communities to thrive. So quotas are absolutely dysfunctional for sustainability. How anyone in government, industry or NGOs can claim otherwise when we end up with quotas resulting in discards is absolutely beyond me. Saying stick with the same alien system with a plethora of rules to make a fundamentally flawed system work is absolutely madness. How is it sustainable, I ask you, to be forced to sea for twice as long, to slaughter twice as much of what you need to catch, in an effort to please an office-born target? To see your lads standing absolutely exhausted because they've had to shovel through twice the fish. To see lads in poor weather smashed up because you have to bide out at sea for even longer to find what you're allowed to catch. Those advocating it, that we stick with the same policy, are either naive or they're seditious to protect ideological and vested interests, or in the sake of our Sir Humphrey-ridden civil service for political convenience and laziness. The worst thing with the current quota system just now is not only the environmental devastation it's caused, but it's economic devastation as well. One of the dark underbellies of the current system, which is only starting to come through in Parliament since Fishing for Leave kicked off, is quota rent and slipper skippers. And this is where people have bought entitlement to fish, but unlike in Norway, unlike in Faroe, where entitlement must be in an active vessel to derive economic benefit, under the British system, people could own entitlement, but stay ashore and rent it back to active fishermen. And what this has created is an absolute travesty of a situation where vessels are having to pay 60% of their profit to pay for the privilege to put to sea. It is economically illiterate to the highest degree to have to pay vast amounts of money, sometimes up to 80% of your profit in a particular species, to rent the right or to purchase the right to put to sea to fish. And that's why we have no new entrants. Because not only someone got to, if they wanted to build a new boat, say £2 million for something in the North Sea or the South West, an 80, 90 foot fishing boat, you would have to put it to sea and to have sufficient quota to work it, to pay a wage and to pay your bills. You would have to buy £4 or £5 million worth of quota. It's a hell of a package. You could say, if it makes money, it would do. It doesn't. Currently, just now, if you buy quota, you are looking at between a 15 to 20 year payback just to pay back the quota. And that's if they don't cut the stock. If there's a quota cut of 50%, that's your business plan out the window, welcome to bankruptcy. That is why so much of the industry today is dying on its feet. Behind the likes of Bertie Armstrong and others in the Scottish Fishermen's Federation, or Michael Gove getting his photo taken of record landings at Peterhead. Oh sure, we can land you fish, that's no problem at all. It's just that all the profit out of the industry is going up the street to slipper skippers. That is one thing that's got to be absolutely stopped post-Brexit. We must have, within our new policy, a commitment, as Norway, as Faroe, that only active fishermen could hold the right to fish. That is why the NFFO and SFF, causing up to many civil servants, would not back Brexit. So I'd like to explain to you why we could have a world-leading policy. A world-leading policy that doesn't end in discards, a world-leading policy that will generate accurate science, because just now, as Owen so eloquently put in an article, and I think it was the Telegraph, our scientists are running completely blind. It's like pin the tail of the donkey when you can't even see the donkey. And what we've developed is, within Fishing for Leave, with some of the leading skippers in the country, is a new world-leading system. We've put it to the civil servants, we've put it to Michael Gove, and we implore each one of you here today to go away and lobby to have this system trialled. Trial it. There is nothing to lose by a trial. If it fails, its detractors are vindicated. If it succeeds, we could have a chance where all fishermen could thrive with sustainable policy. So currently, as you all know when you go to school, the ecology represents a pyramid. You have the bottom of the food chain up to the top. I'm not sure that the humble place is the most voracious predator in the North Sea, but that's what our graphic guys did for us. So you have what was called the Faroe Pyramid from Faroese fisheries scientists, and I don't know if they intended irony when they named it that. So on to the next slide. What we are currently doing just now is not operating in a mixed fisheries approach, recognising there was a dynamic ecology. What Brussels has managed to do in all its bureaucratic wisdom is try and divide the sea up in a spreadsheet into individual species. They are trying to manage each stock individually in a marine environment because, yes, Mr. Cod, next year there will only be 100,000 tonnes a year in the sea because I'm a commissioner and I say so. So we move on to the next slide, and what's ended up happening is we've created a negative feedback loop. What fishermen land and what fishermen record only matches the quota that they are given, not what they're actually catching. What they're catching, half of it's going over the side. Scientists, therefore, don't know what's going on anymore in the sea. Their recommendations back to government are wholly flawed. Government imposes flawed quotas. Flawed quotas lead to more discards, and you repeat the cycle. So is it any wonder after 30 years of trying that the CFP still fails? And that's why that results in discards. That is probably one of the most sickening and shameful things and an anathema to a hunter that you will ever see, is to throw prime fish like that away. As Owen and ourselves did one day, as a quick calculation, it equates to some 2 billion portions of fish every year that are being thrown away. So next time you see an EU commissioner standing with the poor bucket saying we must help the starving children, thank you for your help. So how do we end this? Well, the EU proposes catch quotas, discard ban. When you, rather than your quota being what you will land, it will be what you will catch. What they then propose is to put, as a dictatorial government like, CCTV monitoring in every boat to make sure that nobody does discard like a naughty boy, because obviously it's fishermen's fault that they're doing it. And what now happens is when you exhaust your lowest quota, you must stop. Doesn't matter whatever else you have left to catch, finished. And as I said to you earlier, 60% of the fleet will go bankrupt, and in the transition, the EU can enforce that to claim our fish. What we have got to do is actually follow George Eustace's advice. First principle is George's rallying cry. So what is the first principle of the natural environment? It's the food. Without food, we're nothing. Applies to us as well. If all the restaurants in Birmingham and all the Tesco's and all the rest of it were closed this weekend, I don't think any of you would be here, no matter how appealing it is to boo and cheer Theresa May on Wednesday. So on a fundamental basis, the food chain, plankton. And every year it fluctuates up and down. It doesn't obey bureaucratic targets. Depending on Mother Nature's cycles, it goes up and down. Mr. Haddock comes along. He's a very hungry haddock, and he eats plankton. But of course, due to other environmental factors, he doesn't follow the food in perfect phase. He has fluctuations. He bounces along following his food source. Whether that be recruitment, breeding, whether it be predation, it doesn't follow perfectly. You add into that cod, he comes along and thinks the haddock's very tasty, and they actually follow in counter phase. That's how the environment works. How in the God's name is it possible to take 160 species in the North Sea and accurately measure that to the 10th tonne? It's an absurdity for ICES in the current science to sit and collate with limited data and mathematical models an exact number of fish that are in the sea. It's impossible to do. It's human arrogance on a colossal scale to sit and say, we can impose targets and then hit them. All you can do in fisheries scientists and fisheries management is influence people and work with Mother Nature, not impose on it. And that has to be the fundamental basis of British policy, to work with Mother Nature and its fluctuations. So how do we do that? Well, we can't do it under quotas because we'll never know the truth and we'll never see what happens. Some of the Greens say, oh, well, it's great, if we have cameras, we'll see exactly what's been caught. Oh, sure, you'll see exactly what's been caught up to about the end of February when everybody goes bankrupt. So, currently just now, we started off somewhere close with the quotas. We didn't actually, because everybody lied when quotas were set up in reference. The scientists said, yeah, tell us what's out there in the sea, Mr. Fisherman. And everybody went away and added a 0 on to the end of every single stock, because that was a clever thing to do. We have a situation in the southwest, from where our esteemed friend Cheryl Money comes from. We're back in the 1990s. Everybody was told they're going to cut cod. They're going to close Cornwall and cod. So what did everybody declare cod as? Dogfish. What did the Southwest have a thumping quota for? Dogfish. What then happened? When they cut the quota, they said, crikey, no one's landed a cod, you better chase dogfish, boys. And what happened? The poor dogfish get hammered. And now there's a stock problem. So, as we've currently been on over the years, quotas have become far and far more misaligned with the actual reality of the sea. If they were anywhere close, and the scientists were anywhere right, the system is agreed, and some of the government say it was so wonderful, you wouldn't have discards in the first place. There's a bit of logic missing there with them. So the only thing you can do in a dynamic rights fishery is move to effort control. And Owen has been an absolute brilliant advocate of this since he's one of the few secretaries of state and ministers who went away to actually get an appraisal of what was happening with the fishing. He came back from his tour of the North Atlantic and he realised that the only way to have accurate science so you can sustainably manage your fishery is to allow all catches to be landed. The only way, therefore, you can limit that people don't catch too much is by limiting the amount of time that vessels are at sea. If a vessel's not at sea, it cannot do or have any environmental impact. What happens then is because all catches are landed, you get an absolute, bang up to date, accurate appraisal of what's going on in the sea, and you can respond to that in real time. And what therefore ends up happening is you see a predominance of landings go up, you can raise the time at sea, and as you see landings decrease for the same amount of effort going in, you cut back, you throttle back to say Mother Nature needs a rest, or Mother Nature's taking the fluctuation down away. So what you're then doing is, rather than trying to impose onto Mother Nature, what you're then doing is working with her. Now the big problem in that, it was tried in Faroe and it didn't work. People say to us, days at sea doesn't work, and they're right, it doesn't. It's far too blunt, because you have no accurate measure there of did a vessel catch all its fish in 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, a whole day? Where did they steam to? The problem also with days at sea, with it being from harbour to harbour, as vessels fish close to the harbour to try and preserve time. You have no accurate representation of what's going on. And the Greens are right in this. So what we did was we went off, we scratched our heads, we worked with technology companies, and there's now sensors out there in the market, very inexpensive, they can be secured onto a vessel's nets, and what it measures is soak time. And that lets you know when a vessel was fishing. Very simple sensor, Bluetooth like in your car, the signal breaks when the net is deployed, and your clock starts. When the net comes back to the surface, your clock stops. And because you're recording all catches for that amount of time, scientists can look at it and say, right, a vessel fished for 6 hours in that area. Last year he caught 1 tonne per hour. This year he's caught half a tonne per hour, stocks have gone down. Or caught vice versa, they could have gone up. So that gives you what's called the catch per unit effort system, a highly accurate level of science. You can program into vessels electronic logbooks or computers on board to send this data ashore. The size of the nets. So you know if a guy, one boat next to another, is towing half the size of net, he can catch that fish. If he has caught half the fish of the boat with the bigger net, then he was in an area where there's a bigger predominance because he had half the ability, half the catching capacity. So what this then allows us to do is take a nice even slice off the pyramid. And what you end up trying to do is you take a nice even slice off all stocks and all species, not trying to artificially construe fishing effort to match quotas, is that you're trying to balance what's happening. What you're trying to do is balance the amount of effort, time you put in, or technology, if it improves, amount of catching capacity in, against the amount of fish that comes forward in recruitment. Now the big problem with this, if we move on to the next slide, is that under effort control alone, and this is where it comes to the world-leading bit, so I won't bore you anymore with a lecture on science, is the real bit that this comes in, is under just effort control alone, yes, it will deliver an accurate representation of what vessels caught. The problem is that economics takes over. If vessels are given a limiting amount of time, they will go out and they will target the most valuable fish. And the way to stop that, and this is what we've developed, is a system of secondary controls within the set of scales, if you like. You maybe remember your mother's old scales with the sliders on it. A whole series of secondary controls to avoid what's called a race to fish. What the main one of this is called flexible catch compositions. What happens under this system is if a vessel catches the wrong species, it can keep it, but it sacrifices time in exchange, a value of time. Because that value of time is equivalent to the fish, he has no economic incentive to discard, but he has no economic incentive to target the wrong species. And what you're then doing is you're controlling what you want the fleet to catch. That would also preserve the current quota system and the investment in it, and it would allow us to have a world-leading system. And that will end the shameful policy of discards. So to conclude, that is the opportunity that lays before us. We need, although that might not seem simple, it's based on a degree of simplicity legislatively, we need 5 sentences to triumph and to have a multi-billion-pound industry. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we need. Those 5 sentences are the foundations to allow communities and young families to soar. We ask you to continue to struggle for Brexit. We ask you to go on and to fight for a freedom to secure this resource. Great industries and great countries don't fall out of the sky, but are made from within by their own people. Now we must have that freedom to write our name in the stars once again as the British people. Brexit is a great time when the British people have awoken and want to reinvigorate this nation. Never has government had such a mandate to end the political consensus and to aim for those stars. Instead, we have Chequers and Project Fear, by Europhiles who I think do not love this country, do not think to protect our people and our national interest, and to be honest, in the words of George Orwell, would rather steal from the poor box and sing the national anthem. They tell us we need the markets. Oh darling, think of the markets. But you need the freedom to be able to catch, or to be able to make or manufacture, or to sell to the market. So no longer, really, after Brexit, can they tell us that the goodies that lie within, because that won't wash anymore. So in the words of one of the great Brexiteers that ring true from 1973, now that the lies and the promises have been exposed, the message that comes out is fear, fear, fear. Fear that you won't have any food. Fear of unemployment. Fear that we're somehow so reduced as a nation that we can no longer, as it were, totter about in a world as our own, as a free and independent nation. And a constant attrition of our morale, and a constant attempt to tell us that what we have, and not only that what we have of our own achievement, but what generations of Britons have helped to achieve, is not worth a damn. We are one of the greatest people on this earth. How much bigger and better do we need to be to survive on our own? Our faith in our industry, and how great our industry can be, and how great our nation can be with Brexit is unshakable. But now, especially in the Conservatives, we need to fight for the freedom to do so. We can no longer allow the potential within ourselves to be squandered to appease Brussels. The more we ceaselessly struggle from this moment on, the more our children's future will prosper. In ourselves alone lies the future of the British people. Only one person now can make you free, and that is yourself. It's through our hard work and our endeavours that this nation and our industry can thrive and survive. The peril of Chequers and the transition looms before us, and it's enormous. And thus your resistance against it, I implore you, must also be enormous. It's now time to take off the silk gloves and to bare the teeth of the British lion once again as it roars. The EU says that Chequers means we want to surrender. They say that the British people do not want their freedom but capitulation. So you need to ask yourself today, do you really want this country to be free? Have no illusions that we can win a second referendum if it's called. Have no illusions that we can get Brexit if we fight for it. Because behind us stands one of the greatest allies on this earth, and that's our own British people. So it's time for you, as a party faithful, after everything you've had to endure, for the lions to now lead the donkeys. For as the song says, Britons never shall be slaves. Thank you very much.